Hey, this is Tyler with TJX Survival. Recently, I was given a Swiss Army Zippo knife from the Swiss Army Zippo channel. And that's this guy right here. It's a phenomenal knife. I'm going to be doing some reviews of it, but today I just want to show you a modification I'm doing to the sheath. Alright, so I was recently given by Nick that runs the Swiss Army Zippo channel this knife. It's called a Swiss Army Zippo knife, SAZ knife. I'm going to call it the SAZ for now. And it is a phenomenal knife. You really should go over to his channel and check it out. But for now, I'm not going to review the knife. I will do that in another channel. What I want to show you today is some sort of the sheath modifications. Oftentimes, I find a world-class knife with a horrid sheath, and that's the reason that I don't like it. This is not the case, though. They have a phenomenal sheath. It's a little Kydex that they've put together, and he was smart enough to make the spacing the correct width for a tech lock. So it comes with a little belt hanging device, which I'll show you in a few minutes. But I've added the tech lock to it because I like to carry this scout carry, which is basically in the center of your back, so you can just draw it out. The reason why I like that is it gives me the opportunity to have a pistol on my dominant side and still access my knife from the back. Kind of gets it out of the road. I actually find that's plenty comfortable when hiking. I can just put the pad of my belt for a backpack over it, and it works really well for me. But one thing I like to have with all my knives is a striker. So stay tuned and I'll show you how to do that. Quite a while ago I made this little guy right here. It's basically a neck knife sheath for a Spyderco bushcrafter. But what I did is I added this little piece to it right there. And it is essentially a holder, I can do this with one hand, for a striker. It's a little bit of a different Kydex approach. You don't put two pieces of Kydex together, you actually put a board underneath it. But I want to do this addition to this knife. So basically that's our objective for today, is grab one of these little guys and attach it to there. I'm going to put it on the bottom. If you can kind of imagine, it's going to look like this. It'll go on the bottom only with the top of it aiming up. The reason why I do that is if you can kind of see this little tilt where the top of the knife sits, that keeps the striker in, because nothing's worse than hanging up a striker on a tree or your knife on a tree with a little lanyard and walking off and having it pull itself out of its sheath. So this actually makes it really hard to get out of the sheath. Also, I'm gonna mention this, but in the end I'm gonna trim off more material here than I will on the other side. The reason being is then it kind of has a downward pressure. So once I pull this out, you see how that's kind of closed and touching. That constant downward pressure is what keeps a solid grip on my striker. Real quick, so you know what this is the Habilis Tools bushcraft, or I think it's Exotech or EOTech fire rod. Don't quote me on that, I'm not sure. The reason why I like it is it has a little O-ring closed cap on the top. Inside of that cap I have petroleum jelly and cotton. So that's a self-contained fire. I can drop this in the water. It's waterproof. Keeps that petroleum jelly and cotton covered up. That striker doesn't really matter if it has water on it. You just wipe it off in your pants or whatever, and then you can use the striker on the back of your knife. So this is what I've found to be one of the most reliable methods of starting fire, because you can get it wet. It'll always make a spark, and then you can use whatever kindling locally you find. So that's why I like it in conjunction with one of these. So alright, now with this I've already cut a piece of Kydex. I like black and green and tan. I think that's a good color scheme. So I'm going to use this green piece of Kydex. This is technically Bolstex is what it's called. It's knockoff Kydex, works the same, so what do I care? And basically you're going to want to cut it about that big. Think twice, cut once. Basically the theory behind that is make sure you know what you're doing before you cut it. And in my case, I'm giving myself a lot more Kydex than I need, because the final product's going to be small like that. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and form this with my Kydex press, and then trim it down so that it fits correctly, and then drill my holes to match these holes right here so that I can put it right here on the bottom. Alright, I've got the oven. Wow, I've got the oven. Wow, word of the day. I have the oven running upstairs on broil so that the heat comes down. And we're basically going to put this on a cookie pan, stick it in the oven until it starts to kind of just move just a little bit. Then you know it's become gelatinous. Any longer in the oven and it starts to make smoke, and it literally is hazardous. Like, it can put you in the hospital, so don't be burning this stuff in the oven. And it only takes like 30 seconds. So what I'll do is I'll put this in the oven with some gloves. I like mechanics gloves. Flip it over, let it sit a little bit longer, and as soon as it's good to go, I'm going to put grab my Kydex press, put a board with this on top of it and that on top of it, so the board pushes it up in to form it, and you will see how that's done in just a minute. Okay, now I've got this all set up inside of the press. I'm basically going to heat this up and then place it right there on top of that, and then I will fold the cloth over and put the press on it and put a kettlebell on it because I need some weight. You can already see it starting to bow up just a little bit in the middle. If you leave it in there too long, you'll lose all your texture on the top of it, so don't leave it in there for too long. Like 30 seconds or so. Just enough to heat it up. The other thing too, don't leave your pan in here. So like if you leave your cookie sheet in there and it gets heated up, then you put the Kydex in there. When it touches the cookie sheet, it'll melt on the cookie sheet. As you can see, this is taking, my whole video is saying 57, 58 seconds, so it does not take very long at all. Got to be really quick about that, otherwise it will misshapen and misform. Alright, now I'll wait about 3 minutes and it should cool off, and we'll look at it from there. Alright, it's been a couple minutes. Let's see if it's cooled off yet. You'll see how it's kind of shaped already. There we have it. Still a little bit warm, but pretty solidly shaped. That's what we need. Alright, there's the finished product. The reason I put that board down here is so it would push it up into it instead of down. So there it is, sealed. I'm going to cut it and shape it and drill holes, and I'll show you how to do that in just a little bit. So basically this is just going to attach like that. I'll have this right here, and I'll measure the screws, and it'll attach like that. Now granted, it's going to be a little lower, and I'll trim the excess off, but all I'm really going to do is hit this with a bandsaw, shrink it down, and then drill 2 holes, tighten those up, and then come back, trim off the remainder with the bandsaw, and then sand it so it's smooth. And that should give me a spot to hold a striker on my sheet. Okay, so I've trimmed this off. I'm just testing this to make sure it fits before I finish this bottom part off and sand it. But as you can tell, it fits right there nicely. Sit this down. So this guy right here fits nice and snug, not coming out. and they're good and solid. I'll tighten these up more and it will fit even tighter, and then you can just pop it right out when you need it. And the reason why, alright, so this guy fits nice and snug, okay, nice and solid in there, not coming out, and then you can just pop it out where you need it. And the reason why it has that downward pressure is because I took off extra material over here, so if it's not pushing down hard enough, take more material off of this and tighten these screws up. So I'm going to go sand this up, smoothing that off, and finish this up so it's not so raw, and then we'll be done. Alrighty, I should be done with everything now. Hopefully you can see all of this. So now comes the assembly part. Slip this back in there so it can grip it a little bit better. Wipe it off. I get some dust on it. I kind of cleaned up the edge just a little bit more, make it a little more smooth, just refined it just a little bit on the sheath. It's going to fit behind my back, my right side, so I need to fit this like this. So let's throw that on there real quick. Actually, before I get too carried away, I want to put this bottom piece on first, just like that, so that I can more easily access this back piece. Because what happens is that screw ends up getting in the road of the tech lock. Now, one thing you can do is add a little rubber gasket between the two chunks of Kydex on this side. That works, but you have to put your holes further up this arc so that it holds that lip down. I don't really like making that kind of adjustment. It becomes a little bit of a pain in the butt. So that's snug, and that's snug. What that did was that made it so when I covered these up, made it a little bit easier. Got a brand new tech lock here. And I like to put this as much in the center as possible so that you don't have a floppy end and a high end when it's riding on your back. It makes it a little more comfortable. Tighten that guy up. Tighten that guy up. Alright. So, here's the final product. All the modifications that I've done to this sheath are, it came with this guy right here, which is just like a drop attachment for a belt. It's nice if you're walking because it allows your belt to articulate, and you just put two strings down here and wrap around your leg. And that way, if you can imagine while you're walking, it articulates and doesn't bind up. So that's really nice. So I'm definitely going to use this on a larger knife later, like a Golok or machete or something. So I'll put that in my bag of spare parts, my box of spare parts. So I smoothed off the edge just a little bit, took the bite out of it, just basically run it against a sander with my hands. Added the tech lock, cut and added a attachment. Let's see how this guy works. Now let's just pull a little bit on that lip. Slides right in there, and that is super snug. Okay, so it's just going to hang just like that. And you can see that it creates a little bit of a gap in there. That's good, because the bend of the Kydex is what hold, or the bowl sticks, I guess it technically is. That's what holds it down. Anyway, and that's my finished product. So I can wear that in the small of the back as a scout carry. And again, this is the SAZ knife, or the Swiss Army Zippo knife. Nick, who owns Swiss Army Zippo channel, sent this to me. You really need to check this blade out. Okay, it's the perfect thickness for a blade. It's got a nice 90-degree angle to run a striker on the back. You can baton with this. It's not too short to baton. It's not too long to control. If we're doing minute up-close stuff, it's really a phenomenal knife. And like I say, this isn't a video to demo this knife. It's just showing the modifications I've made to the sheath, which are my personal things that I like to do. But there will be more knife demos of this in the future, so keep watching. Now, if you like this channel, If you liked the video, if you liked anything that I've shown, please share my video. Please feel free to comment. If you have your own suggestions of how to do this better, shoot me a comment. If you have videos, leave them in my news feed. As long as they're pertinent, I'll leave them up. And thank you for watching T-Jack Survival.